Hey there, legal pagers. So I know a lot of you and a lot of people are probably freaking out over the coronavirus for one reason or another. Now, you guys, this podcast episode is not about my personal or political feelings whatsoever related to coronavirus, and it shouldn't be about yours either. The main thing to know at this point is that even if you are not freaking out about it, others are. And it's important, if not vital, to figure out how you are making sure your business is protected during this critical time. And as this is a really poignant issue right now across the world, really, you guys, it just brings to people's attention the impact that any unforeseeable, unpredictable, or impossible situation that could arise at any time could have on your business, and then how you as a business owner should be prepared for such occurrences. So I am going over this and more about the specifics to have outlined in your client contracts regarding unforeseeable, unpredictable, and impossible situations, all in this episode. Let's get to it. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. As a reminder, before we get into this episode, I am legally obligated to give my disclaimer. So I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. All legal information I talk about on this episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. I am only your attorney when you hire me and we sign an engagement letter for me to work specifically on your legal issues. Please feel free to seek out another attorney in your hometown if you need specific legal advice or contact me for more information. Alrighty, here's the episode, friends. Okay, my friends. So if you're listening to this, you know that COVID-19, aka the coronavirus, it's been deemed, just the coronavirus across the world. You know about it, right? Like, it's happening. It's all over Facebook groups, social media, obviously news channels. And I am just putting a plug in here at the very, very beginning that I am not like a medical professional. I disclaim anything related to CDC, guidelines and regulations. But I want to make sure that you all get updated information surrounding the coronavirus from a reputable source and the main source that everyone should be looking towards. And that is the CDC website. So go to the cdc.gov for any and all information related to that. Obviously, news channels have various spins and, of course, positions on it. So go to the CDC website when you need updates regarding travel restrictions and how many actual diagnoses there have been, how many deaths there have been, so on and so forth. That's all on the cdc.gov website. But you guys, right now, as I speak, this is on Monday, March 9th, 2020, that I am discussing this podcast episode. The most important thing to know is that at this point, with the coronavirus, it has not been labeled a global epidemic or pandemic. Yes, I know that some cities, some states have had regulations in place. Some of them have called it local or state of emergencies. And that is all very, very local specific and state specific. But as of now, globally, it has not been deemed a pandemic. Thus, it will likely be difficult for you and your clients to just cancel trips altogether and get full refunds. Now, I know particularly I have been kind of on the list for as many different airlines as I can be, and I've been trying to keep up to date with their new policies regarding the coronavirus and cancellations and rescheduling situations. Now, I know with some airlines, you may be able to get no cancellation fees through certain dates. And that has been a way for the airlines to, of course, combat this situation because airlines as an industry are highly, highly affected right now. But even if, you do have, say, like an event coming up or travel plans coming up, and you have some type of travel or event insurance, I just also want to state that those type of insurance policies likely won't cover any cost of canceling a trip right now because it's just out of fear of traveling, unless you paid for extra kind of additional riders such as cancellation for any reason plans. So you want to look into that if your clients ask you or if you have travel plans in the near future related to your business. And it's also important to note that insurance policies likely don't cover pandemics as a whole. Because if you think about it from an insurance standpoint, that would essentially mean that insurance companies would probably go bankrupt if a pandemic occurred, since all people would likely be invoking their policies. Anyway, long story short, I'm not going to get into insurance policies as a whole, but that's been a lot of things coming up right now related to like travel cancellations and rescheduling situations. Also, just fear-related type of cancellation and rescheduling issues are just overall important to communicate with your clients. So here is what I suggest you do right now. First and foremost, please, 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 if you are a service provider and own a business, check in with your clients today, like as soon as possible. Have an email laid out regarding that, you and your team are here for them. You're not potentially worried about XYZ, but you understand that they may be concerned. Hit those pain points with your clients right now. Tell them that you understand, what may be going on in their head. And then second, list out, what your plan for cancellations or rescheduling situations include. And as a business owner, it's really good to just check in with yourself right now and ask yourself, do you have enough money in your business bank account if a bunch of refunds were to happen? Like, have you transferred out all of your money and paid yourself for just retainers that have been in place and services that may not have been rendered at this point? This is a really good time for us as business owners to really check in financially and ask ourselves, are we transferring money out of our business bank account that is solely a retainer and a retainment of services? And essentially, you should not be transferring money at all into your personal account if the services haven't been rendered yet. So just check in, do you have a solid pot of money and business profit that you can use for unforeseeable, unpredictable situations such as this? And if a bunch of refunds were to come through? And really, is your business just fully prepared for any of these what if types of situations, not just the coronavirus, okay? Because I really want this episode to be applicable to all kinds of different things. If a hurricane were to come, to an island that you were shooting on or, had planning services on, anything like that could arise that obviously is not controllable by you or your clients. Now, another thing to note is if you are in kind of the destination market with the services you provide, like I was just talking about, such as traveling around the country. It doesn't have to be international, but obviously if you're traveling around the country, you could come into closer contact with people that are traveling from around the world. Or if you're just traveling around the world, such as, a destination photographer, this applies to many, many, many of you. If you do destination photography, it is really, really imperative, you guys, that you are paying attention to situations like this, especially with the coronavirus. You should start now by looking at your business from a bird's eye view and being like, do I have in place a plan A, B, C, D, E, so that I am ready for any type of unforeseeable, unpredictable situation? And then right now, you want to be ready to answer questions on the daily from your clients about cancellation and rescheduling policies. Please be empathetic to their feelings. Be a better service provider. Over-deliver to your clients right now. I have seen all too often, right, in so many Facebook, posts that are just massive strings of 100 comments of people being very uptight and wanting to just be super curt with their clients when they ask these questions like, my policy states X, blah, blah, blah. Instead of just really coming from a place of understanding and empathy towards your clients, they're speaking from someone who has a destination wedding coming up. It's in November, so I'm not super concerned about it. But if it was next month, I would be freaking the F out right now. Like, I cannot begin to tell you that it's not only me I'd be concerned about, it's, elderly family members that would be coming, everyone, friends and family wise, that it would be coming and have spent thousands of dollars. Maybe some people have like very, very critical health conditions that they don't want to impact. I have family members who have that. So just like put yourself in your client's shoes instead of being super curt and concrete. And like, I think that's a really yucky place to start the conversation from. So don't do that. And the one thing I will say is, kind of as you're really starting to think, and this is like an HR, hat you guys have to put on. We wear all the hats in our businesses, and you guys know I talk about this kind of metaphor and philosophy all the time. And right now you're wearing your CEO hat. We're going to talk about how to wear your CLO, Chief Legal Officer hat. But I also want you to just wear your HR hat. Like HR departments and managers across the United States for various companies are issuing all kinds of notices to all of their workers, employees, on business practices related to the coronavirus. So you kind of need to do that right now with your clients. So I want you to make sure in this email communication to your clients, or how you're communicating to your clients, if you're just doing one-on-one kind of back and forth emailing with people, make sure you do explain that your retainer is non-refundable, but be aware that unforeseeable situations like this will be able to have you make an exception. And if your retainer is deemed a non-transferable retainer as well, I would say that while you should have a non-refundable retainer, that the transferability of your retainer should be different under these type of circumstances. And I would suggest that you kind of over-deliver here and say, if X situation occurs and you do end up canceling or something like that, that you will have a credit on your account for 12 months or so. If that is possible to do as your business practices go, I would suggest that you do that. Now, that is kind of my, in sum, what you guys should be looking to do with your, best business practices on communicating with your clients at this point. I would also suggest that you reach out to kind of business mentors or colleagues in the industry that you're in and really ask for advice as well on what they're doing and really come to the best solution for you and your business and how you like to conduct business with your clients on how you should really, really be, going back and forth and communicating with your clients at the get-go. So you're not just sitting there and your clients are freaking out and they haven't heard anything from you and they don't know whether or not to ask. They're terrified to ask. Be a better, more proactive business owner with your communication. But contract-wise, this is really what I'm here for and an expert in, of course, as an attorney. So I'm going to get into some general contract implications that could occur from unforeseeable, unpredictable events. And then I'm going to talk about the protection clauses that you really need to look for and ensure you have outlined and delineated specifically in your contract. Okay, so does your contract have specific procedures in place to prepare you and your clients for situations like this? Examples of these type of situations that should be addressed in your contract are, of course, illnesses, epidemics, pandemics. That, of course, involves the coronavirus and would implicate your contract. Inclement weather situations, though, natural disasters, travel issues, all of those things would kind of, I call it invoke or implicate a clause in your contract. Now, remember, your cancellation and rescheduling policies, like I said, should be very, very clearly laid out. And it's really good right now to just grab your contract, your current existing contract as it is right now, and print it out and kind of look at it from a layperson's perspective and your clients who are signing it, as well as your business who is signing on to it and has all these risks and liabilities involved in your contract. So your cancellation rescheduling clause, go to that clause and make sure that you have laid out deadlines prior to the event or session or wedding date for your clients to be able to cancel and or reschedule. And generally, industry standard is around 30 days prior. So if they cancel or reschedule 30 days or more prior to an event, They will only forfeit the non-refundable retainer. Of course, the retainer is always non-refundable, but they won't incur any remaining fees, i.e. they won't have to pay the remainder balance on their account. And you can change this date. 30 days, like I said, is standard. Some people put 60, some people put 90. I know lots of planners have kind of 90 days in advance or 180 days in advance because all of their services come so soon and they happen way before the event ever occurred. So like with planners, if you think about it, they could render 90% of their services prior to 60 or 90 days to the event. And so obviously you should be liable to pay the remainder due. But you just want to have that based upon, of course, the services you provided as a business, have a date like laid out, make sure you have dates, and of course, explain when they would occur any type of remaining or remainder on their account. Now, next is the force majeure events. People are like, what happens right now with force majeure events? Force majeure, you guys, means of superior strength in French. And so does the cancellation and rescheduling clauses get invoked with force majeure events? Right now, no, they are different. So if you or your clients want to excuse performance, you for excusing your service or them for excusing like being, available on the date or traveling to the event due to any unforeseeable, unavoidable, and impossible events, and I'm going to talk here about impossible and why that is a really critical word. That is where a force majeure clause would kick in to protect you, and you would be outside of cancellation or rescheduling situations. I recommend that you put in a force majeure clause that clearly explains your business's policies for excusing performance related to these type of events. You want to specifically include language related to epidemics and pandemics. I see that all too often missing from force majeure clauses. And you just want to obviously qualify what a quote unquote force majeure event is. Usually these clauses are more basic. They include occurrences such as acts of God, natural disasters, government orders and laws, or strikes. And that's kind of it. It's better to list out all qualified force majeure events. And then, of course, at the beginning of the clause, you want to include legal language such as, quote, including but not limited to, end quote, to expand those types of force majeure events under your contract. And you can list out what force majeure events are included. Essentially, you guys, what I'm trying to say here is a cancellation and rescheduling clause is in place for any other reason that your client may cancel or reschedule. But force majeure events are not part of that. They have different procedures in place for cancellations and rescheduling situations. The non-refundable retainer likely still applies under both. And of course, it applies under cancellation and rescheduling situations for other reasons. But people are like, does my non-refundable retainer here still apply if the force majeure event is invoked? As long as you expressly delineate that policy under your force majeure clause and in your contract that your clients have already signed, then it would apply. However, it may be interpreted, I'm always like, it's a gray area. Welcome to the law. Because, what all of us attorneys have been thinking is like, how is a court going to interpret this? Now, I'm going to get here to like impossible events. Unforeseeable, unpredictable situations can happen all the time, right? Like it's not foreseeable that say clients like break up and they want to completely cancel their services. That's different. That's still under cancellation and rescheduling policies. A force majeure event, you guys, is like an impossible situation where your clients, like it's completely outside of their control or it's completely outside of your control. Force majeure clauses need to be two-sided. So it pertains to you as the service provider and your clients. And so make sure those clauses say like all parties. But a force majeure clause as a whole, you guys, means that all of the events that are qualified under it's essentially make performance impossible, right? So because we have fear and hysteria right now of traveling, it's not really a force majeure event because it's not entirely impossible to have the event. And right now, I would say, and this is just my personal, like legal suggestion and kind of experience that I've had thus far, is that coronavirus is likely not going to be interpreted as a qualified force majeure event under most contracts. If I were a judge or law clerks, working for a judge, and I'm interpreting like it's all so fact specific and driven. That's why I'm trying to tell you guys, like, it could be a force majeure event, but the likelihood of it being right now at this point, from a court standpoint, if they're interpreting your contract, I don't think it is. And I think that every court is going to say, right now, like, it's not entirely impossible for, you or your clients to perform their obligations under the contract. There's really, like I said at the beginning of this episode, there's no official government order right now, national order regarding the outbreak, and it's not been deemed a global pandemic. So if your client, say, wants to cancel or reschedule your services and does the whole like force majeure, like go check that clause, like I invoke force majeure, and they want a full refund, it doesn't work that way, and it's not going to hold up in court. The hysteria or fear of traveling doesn't qualify as a force majeure event. Now, like I said, I think it's different. It's fact specific. It's location specific. So like if you have a huge destination wedding in Italy, like at the end of this week, yeah, I think that's kind of a different situation and could potentially be a qualified force majeure event under your contract. So you guys, what I'm saying as a whole, I know I'm just kind of going down a rabbit hole here. Let's get back to the heart of the matter. A force majeure event quite literally has to make the performance by a party impossible. And right now you can still travel, get on a plane, and be in person-to-person contact. It's just like fear of being in person-to-person contact. Thus, as of March 9th, 2020, like I talked about when this podcast was recorded, we are still in the land of general cancellation and rescheduling situations. So your policies in your contract right now apply for cancellation and rescheduling situations, as long as you put non-refundable retainer, non-transferable retainer, what the dates are. If you have like a 30-day deadline for them to cancel or reschedule, and you're in like a 7 to 14-day window, then I would say that the remainder of the contracts, any fees that still apply would be applicable, and your clients would be liable and responsible for those extra fees. But here's the thing. Even if your contract says that, you can be a better service provider. You can over-deliver and tell them it's non-refundable, it's non-transferable pursuant to my, cancellation and rescheduling clause, list where they are in the contract. Maybe quote some language. If it gets to this point, like if your clients are like literally wanting to cancel or reschedule, and then you can say, but I totally understand that this is like a situation that's completely outside of our control. So I would happily transfer your retainer to be on credit for X amount of days. And then just kind of like list out what your policies and procedures would be for the transferability of their retainer. Like, does the retainer apply for like the total services? Does the retainer for like $1,500 that they paid for already, do they have to book a total new contract under you? Maybe you've raised your prices, and so only the $1,500 would be, kind of credit for any further services you would provide. All of that is very, very business specific. So you just want to list that out as well. Now, okay, we're over kind of force majeure events and things that I've been discussing, but I also just want to talk about a few other things here in your contract that you need to have in place for situations such as your client's responsibility to secure their own insurance, inclement weather policies, like say if your flight is delayed or canceled on your way to a big elopement overseas, like what would happen in those situations? Like totally irrelevant to the coronavirus. But, what would happen if you, as the service provider, like had a death in the family and now you cannot provide your services? Like you have to cancel altogether. Like what does that look like under your contract? Do you have every, what I like to call protection clause that you need in your contract to fully protect yourself. I'm going to go over here a list of other clauses that you should look into. We talked about the cancellation clause, and we talked about the rescheduling clause, and then we talked about the force majeure clause. Check, check, check. Make sure those are all in your contract. Then include something like an inclement weather clause. So this relates to how your company will perform under certain weather conditions. Do you perform under all weather conditions? Do you not? Do you protect your gear? Do you have like different, XYZ plans in place? So this clause would ensure to your clients that you will continue your service obligations really unless the location or area that you're shooting in or venue is deemed unsafe weather-wise to perform your obligations. So usually you should continue to perform in every type of weather-related situation unless it's like totally elite, like unsafe. Then you want to have, speaking of safe, a safe working environment clause. So this clause tells your clients that your company reserves the right to discontinue service in the event of some unsafe situation arose. So you should modify this clause, of course, to your business practices. You're going to include kind of all unsafe or illegal working environments that you do not want to agree to provide services under. And this is a really good clause to say that, potentially if your business practices or you reserve the right to cancel your services and not go to a location or area that has been affected by communicable diseases or is in quarantine, this is a good clause to put that in. Next is like client's responsibility to secure insurance clause. People have been talking about this a lot in different groups. And I was like, well, you should probably have like an insurance clause under your contract if you're so worried about this. So what it does is it ensures that your clients understand and agree to purchase all insurance that they deem necessary to protect themselves for unforeseeable events. Like if a hurricane came, they would have absolutely no recourse unless they had insurance in place. You can get travel insurance, you can get event insurance, you can get lots of different things, but you need to have in your contract that you're not liable to tell them that or research that or do things for them. They are responsible to research, acquire, and purchase all insurance. Next would be an indemnification clause. Now, indemnification, you guys, it addresses the duty to compensate and defend for losses incurred. Indemnify, that's what the word means. So a clause here, the one thing I would be very, very cautious of in many of your contracts is sometimes under state law, it is actually illegal. You cannot indemnify yourself for all negligence situations. Because if you do something negligent as a company, you're on the hook for the suit. But for service professionals, you would want this clause to involve losses incurred by you as the company for any unforeseeable third-party claims. You can indemnify yourself and you can ask your clients to indemnify you for, extraneous third-party claims. So while you and the client are contracting under the agreement for all of your services, and you are liable for claims involved in your services, usually in most states, you can indemnify yourself from third-party claims. So make sure that's outlined in your indemnification clause. And then in a limitation of liability clause, you want to limit your liability under certain circumstances. So the clause should extend to indirect or consequential damages that could occur under a breach of contract. And then, of course, you want to limit your maximum damages for all claims under the contract. If a client were to submit a claim, for the maximum damages should be the total amount paid under the agreement. So what that does, you guys, you're limiting your liability. And just a side note here, besides consequential or indirect damages and maximum damages, a limitation of liability clause may also be super specific to the services you provide. If you're a photographer listening in, you're also probably going to have a paragraph or a few sentences under this clause related to what would happen if the media and imagery was stolen or defected or malfunctioned or you lost, essentially you lost all the images. What would happen? So that kind of needs to be in there as well. But of course, that doesn't pertain to all service providers. Now, finally, you probably want to have a failure of your company to perform services clause. So this type of clause ensures that your clients understand the procedures should you not be able to perform your services. Like I talked about, what happens if you have a death in the family or you get really, severely injured for who knows what reason, and you are unable to, perform your obligations that you need to perform and you need to cancel. Like this is basically like the company canceling. It's important to allow your clients under this failure of company to perform services clause to agree to substitution of another professional and not require such substitution. I see when I review contracts often that companies are requiring, like photographers and wedding, planners are requiring that they allow substitution of another professional, and the clients don't get a say in that. And I just don't think that's good business. And I also think it could really be illegal that you're transferring services without mutual consent. So just make sure that you put, kind of like a 1, 2, 3 approach on if you need to cancel, you're going to notify them. And then, what is like the mutual agreement that needs to take place? And then are you going to like give a refund if you have to cancel? So if you're sitting there, you guys, and you're wondering, what really these clauses are, like Paige just quickly explained it to me as I'm sitting here listening to this podcast episode, but I'm still a little confused on what they specifically relate to. I have a free checklist that I am going to put in the show notes. So you guys can go to thelegalpage.com and you can look at our posts and our blogs, and you can just click on this one and make sure that you get the checklist. So you can print out your contract, you can print out all of these clauses that I talked about, and you can check off to make sure all these protection clauses are in your contract. And remember that I always suggest that you have two-sided contracts that grant your clients rights and responsibilities under the contract. And these really also, these two-sided clauses, a lot of them are these protection clauses. So, your clients are way more likely to sign on to a contract that allows them to be excused from performance or payments in unforeseeable, unpredictable events. So that's why it's important to have, very, very clear language in your contracts. I have that checklist. I'll link it there in the show notes. Now, if you're sitting there thinking as well, gosh, Paige, I just really need your help drafting these clauses because I'm not an attorney. I don't have the expertise. I need to get them into my contract ASAP to protect myself. You guys, I got you. Don't worry. I have put together a clause bundle that you can get today. It's called the Protection Clause Bundle because it includes clauses related to protecting your business from all of these kind of unforeseeable, unpredictable, impossible events. The bundle includes the following clauses that I talked about: cancellation, rescheduling, inclement weather, safe working environment, client's responsibility to secure insurance, indemnification, limitation of liability, force majeure, and failure of company to perform services. So you can get the Protection Clause bundle now, and it's at a discounted price. Most of my clauses are regularly $35 a piece. It includes 9 clauses. And so that's about, it's over $300 worth, but you can get it for less than $150 today in the Legal Page shop. So you can go to thelegalpage.com/protection-clause-bundle. Like I said, we will link all of these things in the show notes so you will be able to get it. If you just go to thelegalpageshop.com and you look for Protection Clause Bundle, that's the bundle we're talking about here. And then what you can do is I will give you the actual copy and text that you need to have for all of these clauses, and you can copy and paste them into your existing contract, and you can have these ready to go for any clients that you sign from here on out. Now, remember, this only relates to contracts that you are signing from here on. If you're going to backdate contracts, you probably will have to have your clients completely re-sign a new amended contract that would supersede your previous contract. And you might want to be careful if you're doing it related to kind of coronavirus hysteria, because chances are your clients may question why you are sending them a new contract. So in that case, I would say go with what your existing contract says, do as best as you can to limit all risks and liabilities, kind of assess what that looks like in your business, and go with like the communication part of contacting your clients and over delivering, trying to, transfer their retainer to another session or event. And that was what we kind of talked about at the beginning of this episode. Now, the end of this episode, what I'm saying is from here on out, make sure you have all these clauses in your contract. Please, please do that. And if you guys have any further questions about unforeseeable, unpredictable, impossible events, please just go to the Legal Paige community on Facebook. You can type into Facebook, the Legal Paige community, and it'll pop up. It's a private community where we really talk about the legalities behind running a business. If you have further questions on this, please pop in there and ask us. I would love to continue this conversation. And if you have any specific questions related to clauses, I of course can't give you advice, and I can't tell you what the language should be, but I can kind of guide you in the right direction and next best steps. And I can of course tell you what would be included in this clause bundle if you wanted to purchase it and you had further questions regarding that. So you guys, I hope this was a super, super helpful podcast that you guys, many of us are just deep in the coronavirus world right now. And regardless of, like I said, personal or political views on it, it is something that's happening. It is creating kind of mass confusion in the service business world. And also it's really getting clients kind of fearful and scared, and they may be freaking out. So if they are freaking out, here's some best practices and steps, not only as just a good business owner, but also from a contractual standpoint, what you need to do and have insured is included in your contracts to protect yourself. And that's it, you guys. I will be here same time, same place next week on the Legal Paige podcast, and I hope you tune in then as well. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.